When we think of theology, what often comes to mind are two things: God and religion. And we think that's all there is to it. In this world we live in, it's easy to think that theology doesn't extend outside the four walls of our classrooms. But we're wrong. In fact, unlike when solving physics problems, theologians tell us that we cannot place what we learn in theology inside a vacuum. In fact, it's impossible to do so, because after all, theology starts with a human experience. The origin of the word theology meant God talk. Essentially, we asked ourselves, who is God? What is His nature? The main job of theology then is to determine how we can relate God's incomprehensible yet meaningful story to our own stories as humans. And we can find a glimpse of God's story in the Bible. The Bible is proof that theology is not only personal, but it is social. The earthly ministry of Jesus is enough to tell us that as followers of God, we are to be a community of love, peace, and unity. And one way to achieve this is to reflect that same love God has granted us in the beginning to the people around us, and not just to our friends, families, and acquaintances, to everyone in this entire world. And we can do this by ensuring that the structures in which we participate in are not those that oppress our societies and allow injustices to happen. In this increasingly divisive and selfish world, it's easy to simply conclude that it's impossible to do so. But as people of God, we know that we have a role to play. In the Philippines, it's been almost 7 months since we've been in quarantine. It's the longest duration of quarantine in the entire world. Businesses have closed, work has been limited, and the education system has taken a huge hit. In fact, the switch to online education and whether or not there should be an academic freeze has been a hot topic of debate amongst Filipinos. On the one hand, the future economy will be affected if we stop classes. On the other hand, online education is a solution not 100% practical in a country where the poor has always been deprived of quality education. We choose the latter. 4 million students did not enroll this school year. But despite this, what does theology say we can do? We must put ourselves in the shoes of the marginalized in this situation. We listen.
Pagiging worth it ng pag-e-enroll sa parating na school year ay nakabatay sa kung gaano karaming estudyante ang may access dito.
Paano kung halimbawa everyday yung mga anak ko, mabigat para sa amin?
Hindi ganoon kahanda ang ating mga teachers sa pagbabagong ito.
Ngayong natigil ito, umaasa siyang makaka-adjust siya sa online classes.
From this point onward, we realize that the structures that we have always been a part of have never been just, even before the pandemic. The rich and the powerful benefit. Otherwise, you're left behind. But when we look at the Bible, Jesus exhibited the opposite. He healed the sick. He washed the feet of his disciples. He talked to the poor. He protected the outcasts. He loved them all. We grasp that the way our country treats the poor is a complete opposite of what Scripture has shown. And with this knowledge, we need to take action. It's easy to turn away from issues that do not concern your own people. But the moment we decide to follow Christ is the moment when the entire world is our own people. So let's burst our own bubbles. Let's stop demonizing each other. And let's talk. Faith perspectives and public discourses need not to be so exclusive. Theology allows us to proclaim the image of God to the oppressed, that they too are made in God's image. Public discourse helps theology to guide the actions of communities of faith in an inclusive and practical way despite the ever-changing reality. So hand in hand, led by the love and justice of God, let's make sure no one gets left behind.